I'm Dr. Jordin Wiggins, and this is the Pleasure Principles podcast. Join me on this journey where sex, science, and sensuality meet. Let's change the conversation around sex and pleasure together. Hello, and welcome to the Pleasure Principles podcast. Today, we are going to answer your questions, our listeners. We are so grateful for all of you, especially those of you brave enough to ask us your questions about an area of life that is so intimate. The response was so overwhelming that we will be doing more of this Q&A style for you. So DM me your questions on Instagram at Dr. Jordin Wiggins. And the next time we do one of these Q&As, I will be happy to answer. Okay, so your questions about sex and pleasure that you've always wanted to know. Maybe you've been too afraid to ask. Maybe you've heard conflicting information. I am here to weigh in. I want you to find reliable, relatable, actionable sex ed information. And that's why we will be doing more of these Q&A style podcasts. So let's get started. Question number one, always a good one. How do I know if I've had an orgasm? Well, let me tell you the Hollywood style, what we think orgasm should look like, sound like, feel like on TV or in porn can be very different than our real experience in life. The screaming, the convulsing, the seeing stars, the cut to change the scene is very much how things are portrayed on film, but not how most people, especially people with vulvas, experience orgasm. So it can be confusing if we feel like our body doesn't work like that, or, oh, what this feels like is not what it looks like on TV. But our orgasms are much more nuanced. And if we're performing or trying to get it to feel like what it looks like on TV, we are going to be at a loss. And we're going to actually be out of our pleasure. And that is so not enjoyable. So orgasm, when we're talking physiologic signs, that's increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, increased breathing rate. Maybe some contractions of our pelvic floor. So contractions of our vagina and pelvic floor if you have a vulva, maybe contractions around your urethra if you have a penis. And that's more of the medical side, or like a sign that you are having an orgasm. And it's very reproductive focused. And oftentimes we are having sex for pleasure. So why are we worrying about these physiologic or physical signs? My definition of orgasm is more expansive, more focused on pleasure. And this is what we're teaching in the Pleasure Collective. So my definition of orgasm is an increase or expansion of pleasure followed by release and relaxation. So this is a much more expansive definition of orgasm, and we're focusing on enjoying. But if we're polling women across the board, they're generally saying that there's an increase in pleasure or increase in gratification, satisfaction, followed by some feeling of release or satisfaction. And if we're using that idea of orgasm, we are experiencing so much more pleasure. My tip is, do not chase everyone else's idea of orgasm, or what do you think that it should look like. Next question, I get this one often as well. How much sex is normal per week? We want an amount, we want a box to tick, when that is really not the case. I am always suggesting that we aim for quality over quantity. So quality sex could be you and your partner are having this amazing, intimate experience twice a month that is leaving you both feeling satisfied and connected and turned on. You're kind of like riding that pleasure wave until the next time. So, and if both partners are okay with that, because that's like quality sex, that's not just quickie sex to get it over with. And there's nothing wrong with quickies, but just the sex for sex sake to get it over with, it kind of both leaves you meh. It's like junk food sex. You eat it and it's sort of good, but you feel like crap after. That that's not okay. There's a sign that there's maybe something more to be desired. If we're talking about number of times, if we're looking at research, there is some research to say that monogamous sex or sex with the same partner once or twice a week is okay, or the ideal, or a goal. However, this is outdated research, and a lot of us are really busy, and trying to fit in sex twice a week is just not in the cards with everything we have on our plates at work, at home, with the kids. So again, my rule of thumb is quality over quantity. If you and your partner have great, mind-blowing sex that is good for you twice a month, that is completely okay. If you are having sex 3 times a week and dreading it, experiencing pain, feeling obligated, not okay. So there is not a right balance. Quality sex is always way better than quantity. If you want to figure out how to have better quality sex, I'm your girl. So let's work together. We need to find out what kind of sex works for you. Also, it could be that you're having intimacy more often and more frequently, which doesn't necessarily mean penetration. Maybe you are reading together in bed. Maybe you are giving each other massages. Maybe you're asking each other like questions to beyond just the standard, how was your day, but questions to actually feel connected. If that is the case, we might be wanting intimacy more frequently and then penetrative sex less often, which is totally okay, but we want to figure out what works between the two people in this relationship. Next question, is it bad to swallow semen? I am going to chalk this one up to personal preference. If we're talking about bad for your health, unprotected oral sex has some risk of transmitting STIs, but there's nothing to suggest that swallowing semen is bad for you. Semen is a combo of sperm, some water, sugar, and protein to make it a viable environment for sperm to survive and fertilize an egg. The only bad thing that I would say about swallowing is if you're doing it because you think you have to and you don't really want to, then it's time to stop, have a discussion with your partner, and explore some other ways to enjoy. How do I have sex when the kids are home? Good question. This is a huge break, meaning it brings our turn on to a halt if we're worrying about the kids overhearing or walking in. And it can be a major stressor that takes you out of the moment and shuts down your desire or your arousal altogether. I work with some women that need to be in a hotel or on vacation to be able to access their turn on, because it is that much of a break for them. And we need to work on that. We need to unpack it. That's oftentimes why they are doing pleasure principles or working with me one-on-one, because it's just not realistic to be getting hotel rooms or waiting until vacations to be intimate. Another tip of sex when the kids are home, don't rule out quickies. You might have to lock yourself in the bathroom or the closet, and we have had grads that do this. Just because it's quick doesn't mean that it can't be hot and a moment to connect with your partner. If you need more time, if you're a person with responsive desire that you can't just turn it on and off, you need to plan to warm up. So maybe some sexting throughout the day to build it up. Maybe sending a sexy photo. We don't just want to expect our spontaneous desire to be there if it isn't. So we need to find ways to cultivate the time so that if you're giving the kids the iPad or a movie and locking yourself in a closet, that your turn on, your desire, your arousal is easier to access in those moments. And just a general statement about sex when kids are home. And they're obviously having children is a constraint on your time. If you think back to the pre-kid days, we had much more time freedom, much more time to explore, relax, get turned on. And with kids, there's just more to do. So it just takes a little more planning and a little more foresight. But luckily, I work with some amazingly intelligent women. And once we know what the problems are, what our blocks are to having sex when the kids are home, we are able to make that time for connection. And I think we need to generally talk about getting rid of the shame or stigma around having sex when kids are home. Like, it took sex to make a baby, and now all of a sudden we're ashamed of sex. So we need to really, really work on the mindset piece here when it comes to feeling comfortable being intimate when kids are home. And I am not talking about like flaunting it or being super loud or doing things that are not age appropriate for children to understand, but I am talking about getting over our own blocks and hangups and shame around sex so that we don't pass those on to our children and they don't end up with the same intimacy and connection issues that often can lead to divorce or relationships ending. Are intimacy issues a sign that I should end my relationship? This is a good one because we oftentimes think that the, arousal, that energy that can't keep our hands off each other from the beginning of a relationship, if that doesn't continue, we look at it as a sign that there's something wrong with the relationship. Or intimacy issues in and of themselves are not, in my opinion, a reason to end a relationship. They're in fact to be expected, and there's something that we need to navigate through life and through our journey together. Many couples experience this, and they go through phases where intimacy is less of a priority, or it's just a product of the awful sex education and information we're exposed to that doesn't make intimacy easy because we aren't taught the kind of intimacy that really works for us. So we're trying to fit our relationship into a box that's already broken in the first place. So intimacy issues are definitely something that we need to address, and mismatched libidos are to be expected. So for example, my family, like we were getting over COVID. So if you're sick, maybe there's financial stress, maybe there's someone in your family that's sick and you're caregiving for them. Intimacy in times of stress might not be a priority, or, you've had a baby and you're not getting a ton of sleep. So we want to expect and give ourselves grace for an ebb and flow. Like maybe you were having sex twice a week pre-baby, but afterwards it's twice a month, but you are both okay with that because you're tired. So that's not necessarily a problem. When intimacy issues are a problem is When your partner is unwilling to learn, be educated, explore, understand, and compromise new ways of igniting intimacy, that might be a sign of a bigger issue in your relationship. Have a great week, everybody. If you like what you heard in this episode, leave me a rating. Your support helps me get discovered by more women like you. Together, we can change the conversation around women's sexual health and pleasure for you, your partners, and generations to come.